Welcome to the Generative AI track, perhaps the most interesting and innovative track. I'm sure other tracks will beg to differ, but this is a very interesting track. I have with me two right people to talk about this track. Josh Bryan, who is head of our Generative AI. Welcome, Josh. And Saurabh Kumar, our CEO. So let me begin by asking Saurabh this. Saurabh, help us understand what makes this technology so revolutionary for business. Why GenAI is something that everyone is talking about.
Thanks, Manish. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Very important topic. Super excited to be here. Manish, to answer your question, when we think about generative AI for employee support, it really comes down to three fundamental advantages. One is speed, how quickly it can deliver support. The second is availability, the fact that it's available around the clock, supporting employees whenever they need it. And the third is versatility, just the ability to handle a really wide spectrum of things, all from a common interface for the employee. Now, to put it in perspective, imagine every single employee in your company having their own personal IT and HR expert that's available 24/7, never sleeps, never takes a break, is available instantly without you having to wait, and responds to everything that you need, whether it's a task or a process. That is really the transformation we're enabling with Sidekick 3.0.
Thanks, Saurabh. And actually, our keynote speech that we just heard kind of also, SK talked about these three and kind of topics. So obviously the promise and the vision that you're talking about, Rezolve.ai is able to keep that promise. So Josh, as the promise keeper, let me ask you this question. How do you manage to keep this promise? What is the technology behind keeping this promise?
It's a great question, Manish. So what makes Sidekick unique is how we've built it to be both comprehensive and proactive. The system has complete access to your organization's knowledge base. So think every policy document, every IT procedure, and every knowledge article. But what's really exciting is how it goes beyond just having access to information. Think when an employee comes with an issue, instead of just providing information, Sidekick can actually initiate the resolution process. So whether that's triggering a password reset, initiating a software installation, or starting an approval workflow, it's taking action, not just giving instructions.
That sounds wonderful. Can we see it in action?
All right, guys, we want to show you some of the capabilities of our platform from an end user perspective. And this is going to be kind of a rapid fire demo here. We're first going to get started into a simple troubleshooting use case. So you can see the user said, my printer isn't working. And right away, within just a couple seconds, Sidekick was able to give them some simple troubleshooting steps that any end user would be capable of. The user decided that power cycling did the trick, and we're moving on. We're next going to go into our knowledge discovery, which is a little bit about how we integrate external knowledge to augment your internal company's knowledge. And we're going to say, how do we add a signature in Outlook? Again, within a couple seconds, we're going to tell the end user how they can add a signature in Outlook. You see down at the bottom in the source citations, this is where our trust comes in. So we're saying, hey, this is external knowledge, and we're going to provide a link to that knowledge so that the end user can click on it, either to get some additional context or so that they can verify the information they received is correct, really enhancing that trust layer. We're going to jump right into our smart ticketing. There's a lot that goes into this. So the end user is going to report an issue that they're having. The first thing that Sidekick's going to do is say, I don't really know what I'm having computer issues means. This doesn't really help me. I need some more information. So it's going to ask some questions to kind of gather that context. It's going to discover that, hey, this is actually a screen flickering issue. There's an issue with the monitor. It keeps shutting off. It's flickering. It started this morning. This wasn't happening before. All information that an actual agent would have to gather if someone came to that. All right, so right away, we're going to give some quick troubleshooting steps. We give 5 troubleshooting steps. Down at the bottom, we offer to guide the user through more details or specific of how to complete a specific troubleshooting steps. We also say, hey, if this is too much for you, we can involve a human in the loop too to help you out. And so we're saying we've already tried all these steps. Unfortunately, the screen's still flickering. Can you just create a ticket for us? And when we submit this, we're going to say, yeah, we're going to create a ticket. We need to gather a little more information. Can you tell me the make and model of your computer? Do you know the operating system? And have there been any recent changes to the computer? Now, all this is configurable based on your organization's knowledge or setup. So if you have a specific model of computer that you're using, everybody uses the same OS, the agent won't ask this type of information. So next, what you're going to see is a lot of intelligence. We're going to automatically route this to the IT service team. We know that this is an incident service type. We've created a ticket subject, and we've included all that information that we gathered throughout the conversation in the request description automatically. We've got a ticket number. This is using Rezolve's ticketing platform, but again, we can integrate with systems like ServiceNow or any system that you may be using. All right, so now we're going to show an example of a task automation. And this one's going to be an HR leave request. So my kitten died. I'm heartbroken. It was just this morning. Really what you're going to see in this response is a lot of empathy. I'm so sorry to hear about your loss of your kitten. This must be incredibly difficult for you. Losing a pet can be deeply emotional. Your feelings are valid, and it's important to take care of yourself. We're going to say, hey, this is deeply personal. We might want to connect to an HR agent. So it offers that, but the user says, no, I just want to view my leave balance, please. So, okay, again, we offer more empathy. I'm sorry to hear about your loss, and I appreciate you letting me know. What kind of leave do you want to know about? I'm going to say, just show me all of my leave balances, please, so I can decide which one's best to use. Okay, well, you've got this amount with PTO, this amount of comp, and this is a real integration, pulling this information real time from an HRIS system. Now you're going to see the user is able to select the type of leave they want to apply for. They're going to select personal time off. Unfortunately, bereavement, sick leave doesn't qualify for a pet. We're going to select the start date, the end date. You can see that it's comprehensive enough to understand that we may want to exclude weekends from this so that we don't get docked for days we're already off. And then bam, the request is already submitted. The request of time off. It's that easy. You got a lot of empathy. You got the issue resolved, all automated right away. It's really cool example of an HR use case. Now we're going to do a password reset use case. So across the board, password resets are the #1 request for almost every organization. So dang it, I already forgot my password again. I forgot my password. I need to reset it. Sure, I'd be happy to help you reset your password. Who's this for? We're going to say this is for me. And we're going to say, are you sure it's for you? And we're going to say, yep, this is definitely for me. And then we're going to verify the user's identity. This is with an actual integration into Azure. We're pulling the end user's already configured authentication methods, the same ones that they would use if they were to use the Microsoft authentication flow through the password reset. So we've sent a text message. They've got a one-time PIN. They've entered that. And we're going to double verify just like you would if you were using the Microsoft flow and send one to the email. So we've got the PIN there. We're going to enter that. And okay, you've been authorized 2 different ways. We're sure this is you. On top of that, your credentials are cached even though you forgot your password through Teams. So we're extra confident that this is you. And we're going to make sure that your password meets the organizational standards. Now we're going to get into employee onboarding. This is a really powerful use case. It integrates with a lot of your systems, whether you need to assign certain security groups or generate an email address that follows a certain standard, maybe deploy certain softwares to a specific user. This is an instant return on investment. It saves a lot of time, typically what requires account provisioning, adding users to groups, and takes a lot of time with a bunch of different hands. We're going to handle, we can automatically create this user account, assign them to the groups, create their mailboxes, assign them any licenses, and do whatever else is within your onboarding process automatically in a matter of 2 minutes. So we've went ahead and selected the department. Based on that department, there's a couple pre-configured personas. We're going to select staff manager. And based on the staff manager selection, we already know what kind of software they need configured. Now we're just going to select that they need a computer and a cell phone. We're going to continue. And we're going to add, is there any additional notes or comments? Is there a specific place this user is sitting? Anything that goes on there? We're going to say no comments. This is just a typical onboarding. We're going to give you a chance to review all of that information to make sure that there was no spelling errors, that all the hardware and software was selected. We've selected the proper location. Again, you get a ticket number.
Well, thanks, Josh. I think this gives a very good sense to everyone about what Sidekick 3.0 can do. But I know that many people must be thinking here, so what sets Sidekick 3.0 and Rezolve.ai apart from some other solutions in the market? There are a lot of solutions. They're saying Copilot this, Copilot that, I'm this, I'm that, right? How do you differentiate, right? So, Saurabh, let me pose this question to you.
Hey, thanks, Manish. That's a really important question. So let me start by saying that we only do generative AI, right? It's really important for us to make the distinction from people, where generative AI is maybe a small add-on to some legacy platform, etc. Everything we do, the entire stack is a generative AI stack, and we've been doing it for a few years now. And there's really five key differentiators that set us apart from everyone else in the market. Let me talk about the first two. The first one is accuracy, right? As you can imagine, in an enterprise context, accuracy is super important. And we have practically eliminated the problem of hallucination and mistakes that you might see in other AI systems, really things that we hear, make it really hard for companies to go live with their AI capability. Our system delivers the right answer every time with a very high degree of confidence. And then the second really important differentiator is capability. We're not here to just answer questions. Sidekick 3.0 is here to handle workflows, handle complex tasks, manage approvals, send notification. It's not a knowledge base. It's an action-oriented system that gets things done. And that is really those two things working together really make it stand out in the market.
Well, Saurabh, those are compelling differentiators, right? The fact that we specialize in this space and our accuracy and everything is undisputed. I think those are compelling differentiators. Josh, can you talk a little bit about technological superiority? How are we superior from a pure technology perspective, from other products that might be available in the market?
Absolutely, Manish. So our RAG architecture is fundamentally different from traditional approaches. So most systems simply take a question and match it to a document and provide an answer. We've actually built a sophisticated orchestration layer that can understand the context, reason about processes, and most importantly, take action. So we start by really understanding the user's query and context. And we analyze the emotional and support context. From there, we formulate a strategy for information retrieval, organize the response structure and content, and then synthesize information from those various sources. From there, for example, when an employee asks a question about installing software, most systems may just provide those installation instructions. Sidekick can actually initiate the installation process, check the system requirements, verify licenses, and handle the entire workflow end to end. This is possible because of our advanced integration capabilities and our unique approach to combining knowledge with action.
Thanks, Josh. I'm sure we'll go in depth and a little bit more into all of those topics as we go along. Saurabh, I thought you said there were more differentiators. Are there some more that you're holding back?
Thanks, Manish. Yes, I'm glad you remembered. There are three other key differentiators, right? So we talked about accuracy and we talked about how it's action oriented, but the other three are the fact that it's purpose built, it's very open, and it's very trustworthy. And let me talk briefly about these now, and we'll get into the details of this later in the day. The first is we really are an employee support Gen AI platform. We really do one thing, which is IT and HR, and we do it better than anyone else in the world, right? We're not a general purpose platform that is maybe an inch deep and a mile wide. We're very focused on understanding the nuances of ITSM, how HR works, how enterprises support their employees using IT and HR capabilities, and we really hit it out of the park. The second is openness. We really early on in our life believe that being an open AI platform is really important. I come at starting Rezolve from the enterprise side of things myself, and there's really a lot of systems out there that are very black box. They don't really let you see what's going inside them, and we decided to open up our platform so you can configure it yourself. You can see why it does what it does, right? And it's really important for businesses to have that control. And then last, and probably extremely importantly for enterprises, is the ability to be able to trust that the system is protecting your data, what's sensitive, etc. So we built very advanced data loss prevention and PII protection capabilities in the platform that helps keep everything that the system does private and secure to the enterprises. And these three things together really make it extremely enterprise ready. And again, you heard earlier in the day that we're able to scale from starting with the client to make delivering the outcomes really quickly. And it's really because of these five benefits that we just talked about.
Fantastic, Saurabh. These are really key differentiators. So, Josh, let me ask you this. Um, let's say I'm a large enterprise. I'm already invested in ServiceNow. I'm probably most likely tomorrow morning not going to, get rid of ServiceNow, and because you said you have a fantastic Gen AI. But is there a way that our product works with in such scenario where some customer is already invested in ServiceNow or some other large enterprise solution and they can't move off that?
Yeah, that's a great question, Manish. So Resolve does offer a full ITSM suite of products from ticketing to change management to problem management. But we do understand that there may be organizations that are kind of married to their platforms right now. And that kind of gets to the heart of our integration philosophy. So we designed Sidekick to seamlessly connect with any ticketing or service desk that has modern API capabilities. We've got deep integrations with all the major ITSM platforms that organizations typically use. You think like ServiceNow, BMC, Jira Service Management, ConnectWise, and others. But these aren't just simple connections. They're sophisticated, they're bi-directional integrations, and they understand the specific features and capabilities of each of the platforms.
Thanks, Josh. Now, I know I've seen obviously some of these integrations, and the integrations go very deep. For example, we can integrate with live chat feature of ServiceNow, so that if someone wants to chat with a human being, we can terminate the call into ServiceNow live chat. We can integrate with the service catalog. Like, it's really, really deep integration that we are talking about. I agree with you. But from an implementation perspective, Saurabh, does it add to any complexity, timeline, et cetera, et cetera? What do you think about that?
Thanks, Manish. So I think that coming from enterprise world ourselves, we realize that enterprises really want to maximize the ROI of their existing investment in products like ServiceNow or BMC or Atlassian or what have you, right? So what we did, as Josh was describing, a very deep, free, out-of-the-box integration with these platforms. And not just with these platforms, but also with the entire IT and HR ecosystem. So whether it's Microsoft Graph or Workday or what have you, effectively what that allows us to do is from the day we start working with the client to the day we go live, we are able to compress that cycle because we've already thought through a lot of how employees want to use these platforms, what integrations would make it most useful, the workflows that go with it, right? And so on and so forth. So really our entire promise is to deliver an AI layer on top of your existing IT and HR ecosystem extremely quickly with a very high ROI because you're not spending months and months trying to build things.
Josh, can you tell us how this works in practice?
And of course, so let's talk through a real example. And I know you mentioned some of these a little earlier, Manish, but so you're using ServiceNow. When an employee asks Sidekick for help, it can search the ServiceNow knowledge base, create and update tickets, check ticket statuses, trigger automations, or even escalate to live agents in a live chat. And so all this happens in real time with full context preservation. Our integration framework is designed to leverage the native capabilities of each platform, so while ensuring robust and reliable operations.
Let's change gears a little bit. So tell us about this RAG architecture. Tell us how does this thing work?
Thanks, Manish. Yeah, the funny story is that we were doing RAG before it was called RAG, right? So let me explain kind of what RAG as a concept means. What it really stands for is retrieval augmented generation, and it is a very well understood mechanism to make sure that when an employee asks a question, they don't get an answer based on the generic knowledge within the language model. They need answers specific to your company's policies, your procedures, and so on and so forth. So this is where RAG comes in. When an employee asks a question, the system would understand it it would process it, and before it answers it, it goes through a process of retrieving the right knowledge from your SharePoint site or your policy documents or your knowledge base. It retrieves that knowledge, and then it provides additional context, and then it uses the generative AI language model to generate an answer. So really, your answers are very unique to what your organization's knowledge is. And that way it avoids the pitfalls of giving generic answers based on knowledge in the world, right? And if someone's trying to figure out whether you give a holiday on a specific day or how many days of PTO they take, all of that is in your company's knowledge on your SharePoint site and so on. And retrieving that and using that as context before you answer the question allows them to be very accurate. And this is really how, one of the 5 differentiators I was talking about, accuracy being one. This is kind of how we build towards that.
Very important. But Josh, let me ask you this. Everyone is talking RAG. You know how it goes in generative AI market. When everyone was generative AI, first everyone was AI, then everyone was generative AI, then everyone was, Copilot, and then everyone was RAG, and nowadays everyone is agentic, right? Like they just put the words below in front of their technology, no matter what. So tell me, how is your RAG architecture any different from, some people who indeed have RAG architecture? I'm not claiming they don't have, but they might be some off the market products or something like that. So tell us what differentiate our RAG architecture.
Yeah, absolutely, Manish. So we've been doing RAG for so long. I can remember when Saurabh called me and said, "Hey, do you know that there's a name for what we're doing? They're calling it retrieval augmented generation." And we just kind of laughed because we are so far ahead of that technology that they hadn't named it yet. And so while most RAG implementations are relatively straightforward, they're essentially searching documents and returning answers, we've built something much more sophisticated. So instead of just being a smart search engine, finding information and presenting it, we're more like an experienced IT or HR specialist who not only knows where to find the information, but knows what to do with it. And this goes back to the taking action that we've discussed earlier. So if an employee says, "I need Adobe Pro installed," a standard RAG system would find information and share the installation instructions. So Sidekick, on the other hand, understands that this is a request that requires action, and it can check the user's permissions and if they're in place, or it can go ahead and initiate the installation process. If not, it can start an approval workflow, create a ticket if needed, and then guide the user through any additional steps. So all while maintaining the compliance within your organization's protocols.
Josh, it clearly looks like you're going beyond the simple Q&A kind of, hey, let me ask a question, give me an answer. I know that you guys talked about orchestration capability, right? Can you talk a little bit about that orchestration capability?
For sure, Manish. So we've built what the industry is now calling agentic RAG, and it combines several innovative components. First, we've got an advanced content prioritization system that uses re-rankers to ensure that we're pulling the most relative information. And then we have our reasoning engine, and this reasoning engine helps determine whether a response needs to be purely informational or requires action. On top of that, maybe the end user is just engaging in small talk and there's no information or action required. Or maybe there's an escalation that's needed because the user is showing more than typical level of frustration. So that's what's particularly powerful, is how we handle those different types of responses. For compliance-sensitive queries, we can switch to using pre-approved responses or scripted responses. For technical issues, we can integrate diagnostic workflows or task automations. And for HR questions, we might combine the policy information with actual form submissions or approval processes. So it's this orchestration of different capabilities that really sets us apart.
If I can add to what Josh was just saying, the orchestration capability is what our customers have been asking for, right? They don't want a chatbot that can just answer questions. They want a system that actually resolves issues end to end, no pun intended. That's why we've invested so heavily in building these types of orchestration and automation capabilities right natively into the RAG architecture, because at the end of the day, the North Star for us is how much of self-service are we able to deliver? Can we eliminate 30-40% of the ticket volume by automating the task for the employee? And that is why it is so important to build this into the RAG architecture.
That makes sense. Could you give us some examples of the kind of processes that we could automate with these, agentic or action-oriented RAG, as we call it?
Yeah, absolutely, Manish. So beyond the software installation example I mentioned earlier, we can handle password resets, access permissions, equipment requests, and even complex multi-step processes like employee onboarding for an HR use case. The system can orchestrate the entire flow from the initial request validation to final confirmation while pulling in the relevant knowledge and resources at each step. And so what's particularly powerful about Sidekick is how the system adapts to different situations. For example, if it encounters an edge case that needs additional information, it knows how to follow up and ask clarifying questions to the end user. And if a step fails, it can troubleshoot or escalate with a human in the loop appropriately. So it's this combination of knowledge retrieval and process automation that makes our implementation so effective.
And what's exciting is to see how all of this translates into business value. Our customers are seeing significant reduction in their ticket volume, a significant improvement in their resolution time. And really what is really satisfying to us is they're seeing their employee satisfaction scores climb. And because the issues are being resolved proactively, they're being resolved quickly, they're getting support around the clock, right? And really that employee satisfaction climbing up is a metric we love to see. But businesses obviously are getting great value from the volume reduction and the help their team's getting.
Yeah, that makes sense. And actually, my experience has been that knowledge can take care of around 15 to 20% of the issues. And then beyond that, if you want to, go to like 40% or 50% or 70%, obviously you have to go into action. But knowledge is still 15 to 20%. So let me ask you a question, Josh. How does where is this knowledge coming from? Which are the different knowledge sources that you're connected to? How do you enable the end users or admins to manage the knowledge from the content source perspective?
So we designed Sidekick to work with virtually any content source an enterprise may use. So think of it as a universal connector to organization's knowledge. We can ingest content from all major platforms like SharePoint for document management, ServiceNow for ITSM knowledge articles, or Confluence or Notion for wikis. We can also handle direct document uploads and even crawl specific external websites that your organization trusts and sources. We also have a direct integration where you can create your own knowledge articles as well, right, in our platform. And so we've got a couple demonstrations of that we can show here too.
Okay.
So here you can see our knowledge management platform. And we'll start with our document upload. This is where you can come and upload any organizational specific documents that you may have, Word documents, PDFs, anything that may contain information that you're not storing somewhere else, like in SharePoint or Confluence. So we're going to upload our time off and leave policy here. If we wanted to, we could add some metadata. We're going to skip that and just click upload. It's that easy. So the bot can instantly answer questions from that document right away. Now we're going to show our SharePoint integration, how quickly and easily you can configure that. We're going to give it a title, a description. You can input your client ID, client secrets, Azure tenant ID and information. Just click configure there, and then right away we'll answer questions from that. This is how you can crawl URLs from specific external websites. So we'll crawl Rezolve.ai in this example. We'll give it a title and a description. That way anybody coming behind us knows what they're looking at. And a couple configurations here. So we can decide how deep we want to crawl, or what allowed domains we want to crawl from within that. You can see that from that, these are all the pages that we'll actually ingest. And you can go through and select which ones you want. Done. Those have been added, crawled shortly, and your bot can instantly answer questions from those. We'll jump right into another demo here. This is our knowledge article integration, where you can actually manage your knowledge directly from the Rezolve.ai platform. So when you go down and click on knowledge articles, you can see that there's a list of pre-configured ones that we've done previously, and we're going to create a new one. We're going to give it a title. And then the description is the body of the knowledge article there. And you can see that we've actually, you see the autocomplete down there. That's how you can use generative AI to augment your knowledge articles. That way you don't have to write them all from scratch. We allow for the generative AI integration there to help you autocomplete those. We'll go ahead and publish it. We're not going to set an audience here, but you could if you wanted to use some sort of content restriction. If we wanted this to be a scripted answer or to be delivered without any generative AI augmentation, we could do that too. And we publish. So your bot can instantly answer questions from that knowledge article that we just created. It's that easy.
Thanks, Josh. That looks very comprehensive. So, which knowledge sources people seem to be most interested in? When I say people, I mean enterprises, right? Mid-size, large-size enterprises. What are they interested in typically?
Yeah, so what we've seen is people really, when they think of knowledge, it's across a lot of repositories and assets distributed throughout the company. So they might have their IT knowledge articles within the knowledge articles in ServiceNow. They might have their policy documents on SharePoint. They might have some technical help articles on Confluence or another wiki like Notion. They might even have some files lying around in a shared drive like Google Drive or OneDrive, right? The cool part about how Rezolve approaches all of this is we connect to all of these sources. We bring in all of these knowledge, and people who manage this content can continue to manage it wherever it is. And we manage this entire life cycle. So we go from giving an answer to finding the latest version of this content. So it's the cool thing is we understand that organizations are complex in how their knowledge is, and we cater to it really well.
Okay. Well, Josh, how does the content stays in sync, right? Up to date, in sync, from the source, whatever the source might be. How does that happen?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a crucial point. So we've actually built a synchronization system that ensures Sidekick always has the latest information. So if you upload a document in SharePoint or a new knowledge article is published in ServiceNow, we'll automatically reflect those systems in our system on a synchronization schedule that you can set. So and what's also important to note here is we maintain links back to the original sources. So when Sidekick provides an answer, it includes a citation that links directly back to the source documents so that your end users can click and see the original document, see the context that it's in, or verify the information that was given by generative AI. This ensures transparency and it allows users to access the full context if they need it.
That's helpful, Josh. But what about security? Like I always say, good knowledge management is giving right information to the right person at the right time. That's very crucial. So the part about to the right person, right? How do you make sure that the right person has the access to right information? How do we manage that?
Absolutely, Manish. So I'm sure you've heard some horror stories from some of the other products out there that where someone they ingested their SharePoint into a generative AI bot and asked a question about salary and was able to see someone else's information that they shouldn't have had access to. That's not going to happen in our system. Security is built into our core architecture. We manage that we're able to manage that effectively because we inherit permissions directly from the source systems. So if someone doesn't have access to a particular SharePoint document, they won't see that information in Sidekick's responses either. This applies across all content sources. And so the same security and access controls that you've set up in your existing systems will carry over to Sidekick. And like I mentioned, that's critical to our enterprise customers. They are very big on ensuring that sensitive information, whether it's HR data or financial information or project details, is only accessible to the authorized personnel. So our approach means they don't have to recreate and manage a separate set of permissions. Everything just works the way it should.
That sounds wonderful. It sounds as if you have a magic button back there somewhere that you can push and give the right information to the right person, which is so crucial. And using the source systems security, setups is, I think that's brilliant, and that's what is needed. How does it work in practice? Is there anything you can show?
Yeah. So let's say you have salary guidelines stored in SharePoint where access is restricted to HR managers. If an employee asks Sidekick about salary ranges, it won't pull information from those restricted documents. In fact, it'll just say, I'm sorry, I don't have an answer to that question. But if an HR manager asks the same question, Sidekick can include that information in its response because it recognizes their permission. And so that same approach applies to department-specific or location-specific content. You can have different policies for different regions or departments, and Sidekick will automatically provide the relevant information based on who's asking.
Um, that makes sense, Josh. But you know that knowledge is both internal and external, right? In HR, I'm not so sure, but if you go IT or even some business, there's a bunch of information sitting externally to the organization which is relevant to you. So how do we handle that?
For sure, Minnie. So we all know that technology changes, and as technology changes, the knowledge articles may change, and keeping up with that is a lot for an organization. So we allow administrators to configure specific trusted websites as part of external knowledge sources. For example, if your organization uses Microsoft products, we can set up Microsoft support documentation as an approved external source. But unlike general AI search engines that might just pull snippets from anywhere on the internet, we ensure that all these external sources are pre-approved and relevant to your organization based on how you want to configure that. We apply the same quality standards that we discussed previously to external content, making sure we have proper citations, source tracking, and version controls. So this ensures that even when pulling from external sources, responses remain reliable and traceable.
That's great, Josh. But sometime, as we all know, there's so much content that there could be stale content. There could be content that conflicts with each other, right? You have one document saying something, but some other document saying something else, right? You have a website that you're referring to, which has old data, right? Nobody bothered to or could delete the older pages that still exist somewhere in the website. So how do we deal with this kind of scenario? And you and me both know, all of us know that these kind of scenarios do come, right? These are not one off or something very unique. These kind of scenarios do emerge in many customers.
Yeah, this is really where our intelligence really shines. First and foremost, regardless of whether there's a lot of bad content or stale content or conflicting content out there, what is really paramount is that the user who asked the question really gets the accurate response. So to take a very simple example, because we're in the holiday season, if someone says, hey, when is our Christmas party? And you have 10 different documents that have different Christmas parties from all the way till 1993, the system is going to be smart enough to say, hey, if the user is asking this question, they're really talking about the Christmas party that's coming up a few weeks down. And so let me give them that answer and not worry about these other 5 versions of the holiday party that we have in SharePoint somewhere, right? So we built that type of intelligence for the system to be able to navigate conflicting or stale or duplicative content. That said, really these types of things are best handled upstream. So one of the capabilities we have in the product are these dashboards that you're seeing up on the screen, which allow the admins of the system who are really creating this knowledge to be able to see where they have conflicting knowledge, where they have missing knowledge. Maybe the user asked something and did not get anything in their content. So they really are able to get all of that information from these dashboards. So a dashboard like this really helps the admins see the shortcomings of their knowledge and content and improve it over time.
I don't know too many people who would not like a dashboard like this, especially managers, leaders. They want to know what's going on and have a good control over it. And someone who's managing knowledge, which is especially difficult, if they have a good sense about what's going on, that's really, really helpful. So this is great. So, Josh, I have another question for you. So, a lot of AI leaders, right, IT leaders, they want a lot of control over, the AI systems that they are going to use. If you go into any of these conversations, right, they want to make sure, it's not like, black box kind of situation, but they have a little bit of, they understand the system, what's doing, right, what's the process behind it, etc. It's not one size fit all. They can customize it. How do you achieve that?
If I may jump in here first, Manish, the question you asked is really, very fundamental to our approach at Rezolve.ai. Remember those 5 differentiators we talked about earlier? being open and being flexible is really core to what we do. As I've mentioned earlier, we come from enterprise IT background ourselves, and we understood that organizations need flexibility in how their AI assistants present themselves to the employees. Every company has their own culture, their own way of communicating, and the system needs to be flexible and malleable enough to be able to handle all of that. And that is really built into it. And we not only built in, we also give over control. So very different from the other black box type AI systems, which are really very closed, that you would see in the market.
That's interesting, Saurabh. Josh, can you elaborate on this? What it means in practice? Like, how do you get that working in a product?
Okay, so we're going to get into how some of those configurations that we discussed are done. And this is a live demo, so we're going to walk you through how easy that is to give your bot a personality that represents the culture of your organization and the purpose of the generative AI chatbot. So this isn't a one-size-fits-all solution. We've got many configurations, and we're going to show you some of those today. So the first thing you can do is customize the bot's name. That way, if someone says, hey, Vera, or hey, Gizmo, that the bot knows that when you're talking about Gizmo, you're referring to it, and it can respond appropriately. Now we're going to give a bot a profile. Now this profile is important for multiple reasons. One, again, because you're giving the bot a personality. You're informing of its role. So in this specific instance, we're saying you support Rezolve.ai employees with HR and IT queries and tasks within Microsoft Teams. We give it a kind of a rundown of some of its responsibilities. So we're giving it a personality. But we're also defining the types of questions that it's allowed to answer. That way, if someone comes and asks for song lyrics or a recipe, the bot can actually say, hey, actually, I'm here to help you with HR and IT support queries. I love that you have a passion for music, but is there anything with IT or HR that I can help you with today? Then we can give the bot some information about the company name and the company profile. This helps it be able to answer questions about who do you work for, what do you do, what do we do as a company, but it also helps it match more intelligently to documentation. So if you say, what's Rezolve.ai's policy about this specific HR policy, the bot's going to know and respond to that. But if you say, hey, what's contextual AI's policy on this? It's going to say, I don't have information on contextual AI. It provides context and intelligence. Then we're going to get into the bot personality. And there's a couple different things you can configure here. You can decide how comprehensive you want your responses to be, whether you want extremely detailed responses, concise responses, or balanced responses. And these are important because it allows you to define how much information you want your end users to have to digest at one time. If you want them to have more of a conversation, or if you want it to be more of a, here's a question and here's a comprehensive answer response. You can let the bot know what the current date is, which is intelligent for a lot of different use cases. And then you can define a personality. So you can get into, do you want the response to be more formal? You've got formal Fred. He's a stiff upper lip type. You've got mature Martin. He brings wisdom and assertiveness. Raymond's all about providing factual information. And then we can get into some of the other ones here. Emma, she's a ball of energy. She communicates with enthusiasm. Empathetic Elsie is good for HR use cases where you want to show deep caring and understanding, ability to listen patiently and respond compassionately. Chill Chuck, that's maybe you're an AI startup or a company that's a little more laid back. He's cool and casual. He keeps interactions light, using humor, uses some internet slang, a lot of emojis. Excellent for interacting with the younger, modern, or hip audience. And so there's a bunch of these pre-configured personalities that you can use. So that's the bot profile and bot personality. Now we're going to get into some more of the configurations that are about content management or knowledge sources. So you can see that you can enable different knowledge sources, whether that's general knowledge. Do you want to allow the bot to respond based off its training data? Do you want out-of-the-box knowledge base, which is a pre-configured knowledge base that Rezolve.ai offers to assist with common IT issues or questions that people may have? Do you want scripted responses? Are there scenarios where you need a response to be absolutely accurate with no generative AI involvement? We can include those too. Do you want to allow web search or Google search? And are you going to ingest documents? So these are where you can configure your knowledge sources. Here's where you can blacklist some general knowledge items. So maybe you want to allow general knowledge, but you want to make sure that it stays appropriate. Or maybe you don't want it answering IT questions, but you do want to allow some of the other features, like maybe you want it to be able to answer questions about recipes. You can turn citations on or off, whether you want those trusted responses there. And then you can configure your GenAI powered features here. So we have a bunch of different features baked into the ITSM platform, like auto completion of ticket notes, auto completion of live chat, auto completion and generation of knowledge articles, smart ticket summaries, knowledge infusion and automated email responses, and smart automated email. And these are as simple as toggling these on, right? And so when we get to the fine tuning, we'll just cover a couple of these here because we don't want to be too overwhelming at this time. But do you want to add a custom prompt to your bot? So maybe the bot's not responding exactly how you want it to, and you want to give it a little encouragement. Here's where you can say, hey, you should actually be a little more empathetic than you have been. You can come put that in the custom prompt edition. That's what we've got to show you for the Kimfig app today. Hopefully that provided some value. And
all right, let's dive into something which is very important for IT leaders, IT operations leaders. They want to optimize their IT operations, but first step towards optimizing IT operations is understanding, what's going on, right? And it's not as easy as it seems. There's some data, with maybe not the right level of granularity. If you ask someone, hey, can you tell me, your fifth biggest automation opportunity, for example, I wonder how many people can tell you the answer to that. It's very difficult, right? So how can generative AI, Saurabh, help IT leaders to understand what's going on in their IT operations and how can they optimize it?
Thanks, Manish. Yeah, it's a great question. And I used to run IT service operations myself in my past life, right? And all the metrics we track around first call resolution, mean time to resolution, they're all backward looking metric. I can't really do anything about them. The month has already passed. I'm in front of my CIO getting screamed at my first call resolution not being so exciting. So really, when we started to think about how do we transform this analytics business, we really came up with a whole new approach. We call it Aura Insights. And it is really a revolutionary way of thinking about analytics in the IT service management space. The purpose of what we're doing is twofold. One, it is to really begin to help people peek around the corner and see what's going to come down the road. And secondly, it allows them to elevate their entire support game. It is not just reporting on some simple metrics that have already happened. It is really built with the idea to allow them to scale their business, deliver a better experience, and most importantly, provide actionable insights, things that they can use to automate their platform, things that they can use to improve the experience of the user, things that they can use to help their agents work better. So all of that is encapsulated in Aura Insights, and I'm personally very excited about it.
Can you break down some of these capabilities? How does it look like?
for sure, Manish. So first, Aura Insight analyzes ticket patterns to identify automation opportunities. It looks at where employees are spending time, what issues keep reoccurring, and which processes could be streamlined through either automation or knowledge solution. And what's unique about this is that it also calculates the potential for ROI for each and every automation opportunity, which really help IT leaders prioritize their investments. And so if we want to touch on the technical implementation, it's quite sophisticated. So the system doesn't just analyze the volume of tickets, but it's actually reading their content, their resolution path, and their outcomes. And this really helps us identify patterns that might not be obvious from the traditional metrics that Saurabh discussed before. And actually, you can go to the next slide. So we analyze user sentiment across different types of support interactions would help organizations understand where employees are satisfied and where they may be experiencing friction. We also check escalation patterns. So which issues are consistently requiring escalation, why they're being escalated, and how these could have been prevented or streamlined. And so what's particularly powerful is how this ties into urgent issue identification. We can identify patterns that indicate when similar issues have required urgent attention in the past and help organizations get ahead of potential problems. Really, you can think of Aura Insights as a strategic advisor for your IT support optimization. And when IT managers look at their dashboard, they can immediately see where automation could have the biggest impact, which knowledge gaps are causing the most escalations, and how sentiment varies across different support areas. This intelligence really allows them to make data-driven decisions about where to invest their resources for maximum impact. To continue on that, we're also seeing organizations use these insights to continue to refine their support processes. For instance, when we identify common escalation patterns, organizations can use this information to enhance their knowledge base, adjust their automation rules, or retrain their support teams. And just to touch on the ROI again, one of the most valuable aspects of Aura Insights is its ability to track ROI and operational improvements over time. It allows IT leaders to see how automation initiatives are performing, how sentiment is trending, and how escalation patterns are evolving. This creates a feedback loop that helps organizations continuously optimize their support over time. And because it's powered by generative AI, these insights become more refined and valuable over time as the system processes more data and identifies more patterns. It's about giving IT leaders not just data, but actionable intelligence that they can use to transform their operations.
Let's talk about trust in AI system. It's very important because the people who are getting the answers, they need to be able to trust the question and the answers that they're getting. They need to be able to trust their AI really, and it's very important for the leaders as well. So tell me, what kind of guardrails have you put in Sidekick 3.0, and what's the plan here? What have you already done? What are you planning to do? Saurabh, you want to take that?
Sure, Manish. So guardrails in AI are really very important. As an enterprise technology or an enterprise business leader, you want to bring in an AI system that you can trust. And the way we think about it is really breaks down to four key components. The first is understandability, right? Being able to explain what AI does, the decisions it makes, why it made those decisions, make sure they are understandable, make sure they are auditable, make sure they're traceable. So building trust comes from having that understanding. So that's kind of the first building block. The next building block is data protection. This is really treating your private data as truly private data and safeguarding that data to make sure it stays private, all the way from a user asking a question to us generating a response, giving it back to the user, that entire life cycle, and protecting it at every step of the way. The third step, or the third building block, is really maintaining privacy. So again, not using your data in training a model and things like that. So making sure that that privacy is really respected. And lastly, making sure that the responses are appropriate, right? So whether it's ethics or bias or just the accuracy of the response, right? Making sure that the answers that your AI system is providing are appropriate for an enterprise context, and it's also accurate. So those four things together really help us build the guardrails and that foundation of trust that we think is fundamental to an enterprise adoption of AI.
Let's talk about what I call black box effect. So many of our competitors, their products are black box, in the sense clients don't know what is in there. They don't know if an answer they're getting is right or wrong, or if it is wrong, why it is wrong. It's really literally a black box. That's how it has been described to me by some of our customers and prospects. And that's why I'm quoting that word. And I know that we have created something called explainability, right? Which actually takes away this, it's opposite of that black box concept. It's actually gives a lot of transparency. Saurabh, can you talk a little bit about explainability, why it is important, and what kind of control does it give to users?
So, Manish, for us, explainability was really important to build correctly in the platform. And we wanted to go in the other direction. We wanted to make it as accessible, as easy to understand as possible. So we built this really visual interface to explain how a user's query goes through the various steps of the RAG architecture to, at the end of the day, give a response on the other side. So we take a user's question, we show all of the content sources where it connects and pulls information from. We show what language model it connects to, what context was provided to the language model, and then we show how that answer was provided back to the user, what logic was used throughout the process, what thresholds, what prioritization, right? So you can very visually, easily trace a conversation from a user asking a question to an answer that they got back. And for us, this is one way of explaining to the user how the RAG architecture came to the conclusion that it did. We do this for every interaction. So if you go to knowledge management, this is available for every interaction. You can trace the conversation, you can trace the explainability, and this will also be a part of our agentic system. So you will be able to not just look at how the content was answered, but also what was the reasoning, the rationale, the thought process that went into it in answering a question. So very excited about explainability. Again, it is really one of the building blocks of how we believe an enterprise system needs to build that trust and guardrail.
This is great, and I can tell you that this is one of those features that our customers just love, especially the people who are a little bit more, even more technical oriented, right? They love this feature. This is hands down, because that really helps them understand what's going on. So I love this feature, and our customers love this feature. Josh, I got to ask you about another question that is often asked to us, and which is, listen, what happens, right, if there's a PII involved in a conversation by mistake, right? So someone comes in and they type something which is a PII. Is this PII going to be saved somewhere in the system? And what's going on? How are you handling PII, especially in a GenAI kind of situation, which is a first, right? Like, not many companies are able to deal with this kind of situation. And it's an important thing. You cannot avoid it. So what's going on in PII in GenAI kind of system? Let's talk about that.
Yeah, absolutely, Manish. So when generative AI first kind of became mainstream, and a lot of people started using it, one of the things that was surprising was that they were realizing that the data that they were inputting when they were chatting with the model was being returned as answers to other people, which is something that's kind of terrifying when you start thinking about social security numbers, driver's licenses, names, email addresses, or other types of personal identifying information. So we've built actually a comprehensive data loss prevention layer, which provides default protection for all types of sensitive information. So specifically, out of the box, we cover things like social security numbers, credit cards, bank account numbers, employee IDs, customer IDs, addresses, and phone numbers, essentially any personal identifying information that needs protection. What kind of differentiates us, though, is we're not only providing the protection. When an end user inputs this kind of information into a conversation, there's a couple different things we can do. The first thing we always do is redact that information. That information is never submitted to any language model. We handle that in-house on our secure servers and redact that information before ever engaging a language model. Secondly, what we can do is we can actually provide education back to the end user. So if they provide this kind of information within a conversation, we can stop the conversation and say, hey, I noticed in your question that you included a social security number. And we can explain to them why that's not safe and the company policies around how they should handle that type of information. And so that's configurable, right? We can educate the end user on the type of information they submitted and why they shouldn't and how they can properly handle it. Or we can simply redact the information and continue on the conversation. Either way, the information is always redacted. Now, getting into the extensibility of it, we understand that there's going to be specific types of data that an organization doesn't want released. That's not simply social security numbers or credit card numbers or bank account numbers. And so we allow every organization that has unique data that they need to protect that as well. So if you've got like a unique client ID format or project codes or some sort of proprietary information patterns that need protection, our platform can actually be configured to recognize and protect these custom data types with the same rigor as a standard PII. And you can define your own patterns, data formats, and even provide context clues like words to score certain types of PII higher. So this all comes together as a comprehensive shield around sensitive data. The system is always monitoring all interactions for sensitive information using the custom or standard rules and always redacting them. So it happens automatically, it happens consistently, and whether that's some geographic specific requirement or custom organization rule, the same level of protection is applied at all levels.
Fantastic. Let's move on to another topic, which again nowadays you cannot escape, which is agentic AI. So my first question to you, Saurabh, is really agentic AI, buzzword or real? What's going on here? Tell us a little bit about agentic AI and what is the impact of that in our life.
Thanks, Manish. Yeah, I mean, I don't think you can go a day without hearing about agentic AI. And this is really, it's only natural that AI, as we think about it, evolves to agentic AI, because in life, that's how we do work. There's people who are helping, and AI, if it's going to do that kind of work, has to have that type of agency and intelligence and autonomy, right? So let me step back and maybe give a quick example and then dive into what the differences between agentic and traditional AI are. So if I think about my evening today, and let's say I'm free, which I'm not, but let's say I am, and I wanted AI to do something for me. One, in a traditional AI, let's say you use Siri or a smarter version of Apple Intelligence, you would say, hey, can you book me movie tickets for 6 p.m. at this movie theater, right? And then that AI will go and execute whatever it needs to do, a very scripted task execution. It will book you that movie ticket, right? In an agentic AI system, you would say, hey, I'm free today evening. Can you help me plan something? It's a more goal-oriented approach where I'm giving AI the freedom and flexibility to think about that outcome and come up with an approach. So if it really boils down to those as kind of the two key axes of differentiation between agentic and traditional. Traditional AI is very input-driven. You give it a specific task, it executes the task, it gets it done. Agentic AI, you describe an outcome or a goal that you want to achieve, and you give AI some flexibility and some autonomy to make those decisions, run with it, and deliver you that outcome. So in my example on if I tell AI I'm free today, it might be able to see, hey, looks like Saurabh just watched a movie a couple days ago. He does not need to go to a movie, but maybe he likes to eat, Italian food. So I'll make him a reservation at Italian food place, and maybe I'll also block, some time on his calendar. So it decides how it wants to deliver that outcome, which the outcome in this case was you want to do something with your evening because you're free. So it is really where we strongly believe all AI systems that are mature and sophisticated to deliver true value to the enterprises will be evolving too. We've been doing agentic for a while. We have an extremely well thought out agentic implementation within the IT support space that we already do. And we're expanding it to a lot of other enterprise capabilities as well, which we'll talk about in a minute. But very exciting development.
Wow, that sounds path-breaking, and I of course I keep hearing about things like these, and I know we are doing a lot of stuff like this. These are really going to make a difference to how we live our life. Josh, agentic AI in IT support, in HR support, what kind of agents are we talking about? Can we get a little bit specific in terms of what we have at Rezolve.ai in terms of agentic AI?
Yeah, absolutely, Manish. And this takes me back to the RAG conversation where Saurabh called me and said, hey, there's a name for that thing we're doing. It seems like our technology is always a couple steps ahead of the buzzwords. So like Saurabh said, we do have a really robust agentic system that drives both our IT and HR support. So when you think about in an ITSM use case, instead of your traditional support structures, you have AI virtual agents who are experts in specific areas. And you can say they're working as sidekicks along human support agents. So we've developed specialized agents for different aspects of IT support. And we'll get into a couple of them here, but know that these are just a few of the many that we use. So if you think about an incident management AI agent, which handles triaging or troubleshooting or other actions like escalation and routing, that's a good use case. Is it can autonomously decide whether there's enough information to assist the user, and if not, it'll ask follow-up questions, or maybe it knows that this is a situation that needs troubleshooting. It can engage in a troubleshooting dialogue with the end user. And it's intelligent enough to say, hey, this is out of my realm of expertise, or this user is very frustrated. We're going to escalate this to a human support agent. Then you get into the request management agent, which can manage all sorts of user requests from like software installations or access requests to hundreds of other common support agents. And what's particularly powerful is how all these agents are working together. And they're coordinated by a level 1 support agent, which can either function as a simple routing agent or combine smart AI-based orchestration with the other expert AI capabilities. I'll give you a concrete example. So when we think about our content search intelligence, when a user asks a question, our agentic AI first develops a plan for identifying what information it needs to provide a complete answer. Is this likely going to be a task automation? Is there documentation available for this? Is this a scripted answer that requires a very specific non-generative answer because of compliance or some intricacies within that response? It may decide, again, like the previous incident management agent, if it needs more information from the user through follow-up questions for clarity. It'll then execute that plan it's put together, engaging the appropriate tools. And then it doesn't just stop there, right? So it evaluates all the information it's gathered against its plan and readjusts and re-executes as needed. And then only when it's confident that it's reached the target outcome does it present that information to an end user.
That's truly fascinating stuff. This is stuff science fiction is made about. I'm a sci-fi fan, and honestly, this is reaching the sci-fi level of intelligence. I'm really impressed. We are a little bit ahead of time, if not, definitely ahead of our competitors, and very focused on solving the problems in IT and HR, right? Which is the area that we call our domain. And where we are specialized and we are digging deep, and like Saurabh said, we are going a mile deep. So thank you so much for bringing this content and information to our listeners and audience. I'm sure there are a bunch of questions. People can type those questions on the side. We'll answer to those questions, and of course, people can reach out, and we'll be happy to spend time with them. Thank you so much, Josh. Thank you so much, Saurabh. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having us, Manish, and thank you everyone for listening to us.
Always good talking to you, Manish.
Take care.